welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Nigeria just attained 59 years after independence, and to mark this wonderful occasion, this august occasion, President Muhammad Buhari announced some very telling decisions in his address. Reactions to those decisions have been pouring in from Nigerians here at home and elsewhere, many of them expressing concerns regarding the likely impact of this universally acclaimed fragile foundations of the nation. However, there's also been differing views on the same issue for a legal and political perspective on the content of the president's Independence Day address, as well as other recent developments in the polity. We are now being joined by Olisa Agbakoba, senior advocate of Nigeria, human rights activist, maritime lawyer, former president of Nigeria Bar Association, a one-time presidential aspirant. Welcome to the program, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Let's get straight to it.
Yep.
Charles Soludo and Bismarck Rivani went guns blazing on the platform. In fact, he said, we're trying to build a 100-story building on the bungalow foundation.
Yes. That's profound.
What's your reaction to that?
No, that's profound. That's profound. I mean, a couple of things have happened, and what I've told myself after coming back from Korea 2 days ago is let's, for one, be on the aha spirit. I'm tired of our world's poorest capital, blah, 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 kidnapping. So let's put that aside for once. Can we make anything work out of all this? So first, the president's speech, a bit bland, but you can fill in the gaps. Soludo and Bismarck are both key guys that spoke on the platform. I take it that they would not have spoken unless they are sure that they might make something of it. So we are going to the inaugural. So what I want to see is what I saw in Korea. In 1961, Nigeria was part of the basket of countries that gave Korea money at the end of the North Korea, South Korea War. I went to the DMZ, I peeped across, and I saw the effect of a closed society. Nigeria is closed. That was the point Ludo made. Abuja is so dominant. We need to open it up. How do we do so? Economic transformation. We need tools. So first is to say, there's this old bungalow we all live in. We can't continue to live in it. So President Buhari has called in the architects to say, look, this bungalow, it's too crowded. We are fighting. There's headsmen, there's Boko Haram, there's everything. So the recommendation of the designers, a bunch of architects, is to say, we need a new 100-story building. So the first thing to do is, who will design it? So my first point of interrogation would be to say to the president, you need to have other than economists in the Economic Advisory Council, because development is bigger than economics. Lawyers play a big role. For instance, Governor Shonglu was also there at the forum, and he talked about rains holding him up.
And he also said that Lagos can't have a subway. Because that was quoted. He said, no, I'll quote that one completely. It says Lagos can't have a subway. Yes. Probably will not have a subway because of the water topography issue.
Not true, not true. In Hong Kong, an Igbo man is a city engineer. When I was president of the NBA, I went there and I spoke with a couple of them. They have a tunneling department. The Hong Kong topography is worse than Lagos. Singapore, the same thing. South Korea is a peninsula. So let's not go there. What I challenge the governor to do, because I'm also here to say, let's stop looking at Abuja. Yeah. What are the governors doing? Lagos has 20 million people. The national housing stock is worth $7 trillion, not Naira, $7 trillion. Lagos accounts for 50% of the national housing stock. The governor of Lagos State is unable to have his signature respected, and I challenge him, by any banker. You are the COO, take it to the bank, they will have to verify it. Access to credit. If you want instant credit, you got to retitle property in Lagos so that money can come out. 41 years at the bar, I have never gotten a loan from any bank.
But he will argue with you and say when you look at, I mean, the governor will argue with you and say when you look at the Land Use Act, you know, it clearly
Yes.
has a lot of unbundling to be done in that provision.
The Land Use Act is good because it sets the standards for titling. What's weak in the Land Use Act is the administration. So I would amend the Land Use Act and introduce an executive agency called the Land Registry, separate from the governor. When Peter B was governor, he once got an award for having signed the highest number of COOs. And I said, what?
Governor's concept.
Give me a break. So you need to release capital.
Nasa, I wanted to talk to you more about your developmental law policy and also the point Professor Soludo made about turning Nigeria into a judicial capital of the world, similar to London, where in almost every commercial agreement that we have now, all legal disputes are to be settled in London. That leads me to your suggestion for an arbitration policy. Can you expand on that in view of the whole P&ID saga?
Right. So in other words, that's a good question. In other words, law plays a role in development. Remember I said that President Buhari should consider putting a lawyer on the Economic Advisory Council because there's a lot that lawyers can do. So what we need to do is to have proper trade laws. It's not to just go like Bushmen and close the border. That's what Bushmen do. You need a trade remediation agency to deal with all this.
But the government claims closing the border will be making money for them.
It's not, it's losing. That's not true, but that's not the point.
That's what they claim.
That's not the point. The point is you use law to do it. What Trump is doing is not altogether unsensible because he's using trade laws to drive business in America. We need to use trade laws to drive business here. So I will recommend the establishment of a National Trade Remediation Agency. There's a guy called Erisco. He's Nigeria's largest producer of tomato paste. He can produce. You know why? The Chinese bring theirs cheaper. So he needs protection. Now, so you don't get jobs merely by saying, we're going to create 100 million guys out of poverty over the next 10 years. You've got to show me how. In the maritime sector, a couple of laws will create 4 million jobs over the next 3 years. Crude oil has got 34 byproducts on the value chain. We focus only on the crude. In my field, there are 4 soft areas that we can work on: shipping, banking, insurance, and law. No Nigerian lawyer has gotten any big ticket work on crude oil or hydrocarbons. So you need to change all this. So that's why I say arbitration. We can't have the seat of arbitration outside of Nigeria. Not possible. Makes no sense. We're giving work to foreigners. So this is the way to retool and revamp our, space to get in business.
Absolutely. And one key area when it comes to revamping this space of ours that unfortunately governance is not putting enough emphasis on is definitely science and technology. I remember when we had Kingsley Moghalu on this show and he said if the president was serious, instead of appointing himself as Minister of Petroleum, he would have appointed himself as Minister of Science and Technology.
Absolutely.
So we're speaking now about the 4th Industrial Revolution, a world in Korea that you just got back from, and a world in Nigeria that we really and truly should be seeing, but we're not. The backbone of that is artificial intelligence. How do you think we are faring in terms of prepping the next generation for this world of artificial intelligence that really and truly is not just taking over, but is going to be the basis of everything? Because I think that's a key focus that unfortunately we continue to just forget.
The only one minister that understood this was Obi Ezekwesili. This issue about certificates as the only means of employment has to go. I'm happy that the governor of the central bank, by the way, is one guy that I give credit for doing a lot of good stuff. We got to have creativity as part of our educational module, not certificates. Creativity, those who are thinking.
21st century education.
Absolutely, that's the only way to go. So you can employ the masses of people. When I hear that we have 23 billion people unemployed, it's not true. In South Korea, where I was, I could see small businesses engaged, old women. They make all kinds of things. They're proud. They tell you, buy my tie, it's made in South Korea. Buy this necklace, buy this, buy that. So it's to the government that will look to create the space. So two things here. For one is for Abuja to open up. Or two is for the governors to stop sleeping and crying and going to Abuja. The Lagos State governor particularly should set the example of how subsidiarity, meaning at the bottom, can benefit society. And the one place I put on the table for this challenge is the housing market. There's a lot of money in the housing market. People can't access credit because they have... See, the problem with housing is you can have a big house. It's got two lives. It's got the physical life, so this is a physical life. But if I'm in the bank is not seeing this. What they see is the title. So that's the conceptual life. We need to work on the conceptual life of property. So we connect housing to the financial services sector. In England, over the last 40 years, I had a little house. And I'm proud to say it. I have 6 houses from one little house. Because I could move that little house and keep refinancing. I keep refinancing. Just me, refinancing. So you can imagine every other person in Nigeria having access to that type of credit and its impact on the economy.
I think the word for it is dead capital. Yes. We've got a lot of dead capital. And I think the deal breaker is to be able to have laws around dead capital. I mean, PwC came out with a report recently, says, Andrew Nevin championed that report. Dr. Andrew Nevin says 1.7 trillion in dead capital. Hernando de Soto, Professor Hernando de Soto is one of the biggest authorities on dead capital in the world. And he says once you give property right back, then we start to open up the economy. He did that in Peru with the Shining Star Rebel. The question is, when are we going to have real conversations on dead capital in Nigeria? Because we've never scratched the surface of it.
I did a study with Business Day, and we called it Waking Up Dead Capital. And what you say is absolutely right. De Soto did his fantastic book, The Mystery of Capital. Capital is not mysterious. It's not. You've got to give it life. You've got to wake it up. You've got to use law to beat it up. And once you beat it up, then there's money. And the banks will not say, we can't lend money to you. The banks must be lending money to small business. But the banks cannot because they are spending all their money on the few Dangotes.
I wanted to continue from Rufai's mention of PwC's report on dead capital and go to their report on diaspora remittances, which also ties in with Leila's point. It was mentioned during the speech by Professor Soludo, the danger of exporting this mass of semi-literate or outright illiterate Nigerians and the need to properly educate Nigerians. How should we harness our human capital? Because he had quite alarming figures, 400 million to 725 million in the next 80 years.
The only way to do it is to go to the design. All what you're saying are the you know, on a chessboard you have all sorts of things you play with. So I don't want to look at the micro issues. I think what's important, because there are too many things that we have to grapple with. And if we miss it, then we'll be in trouble. So let me say that President Buhari is talking to you and saying, look, we have this old bungalow and it's not good. So we need to redesign something. So you're going to ask him, how many floors are you looking at? So it will tell me the thickness. He needs to, in his new economic vision, which I hope he has, state out what he's looking for. He said 100 million people in 10 years, am I right?
Yes.
What else does he want to see? I think I'd like to see double-digit growth. I think I'd like the 100-story building to have good air conditioning. Therefore, I need to see the governor of the central bank doing what is called quantitative easing. I just need to feel cool. The interest rates are crushing. You can't talk about all this issue of education, diaspora, when we're crushed. We need to have a lift. So, quantitative easing, interest rates. Why can't interest rates drop below single digits? I want someone to tell me why. The government has TSA. The money is packed in the CBN. It's my money. You are Access Bank. You want my money? 5%. You don't want it, go away. It's doable. So we need to set the macroeconomic developmental framework to then have all these issues you're talking about. Then we need to say, who are the guys going to design? So, Rufai, you are the main contractor. So you come along to talk to me, or you come with 10 other contractors. I said, but where is the sub-design for electrical? The guys for carpentry. So this Economic Advisory Council needs to have different sorts of experts.
So back to this issue of there being a vacuum in this council because there's no lawyer.
I didn't say there's a vacuum. I just want to make a better. You did.
Yes.
Okay.
There's a vacuum there.
No, I would say that there should be a better mix. But I'll put it that way. I want to put it positively. So you can keep all those guys there, but you need to have other kinds of experts on the council, not just pure economists.
Let's talk about structure.
Yeah.
In the 60s, the Korea you just came from was in this same situation.
Yep.
General Park Geun-hye's father was in charge then. Korea was getting aid money from America.
And Nigeria.
And what they were using to do was develop a group of businesses called the Shables.
The Shables, yes.
And the Shables are the multinationals we have today.
Yeah.
Samsungs and,
Kia.
all the big multinationals. How can Nigeria, with this current circumstance, develop our own Shables? How can we move from a commoditized economy to industries that are producing? How?
Again, I'll ask the question. In the bungalow I have visited, it's overcrowded. I see guys that are drunk on ogogoro. Ogogoro here means crude oil. Crude oil is a resource cost. So no one wants to work hard. I mean, look at Lotte in South Korea. God. So the point made by Professor Gupta that we need more Dangotes is valid. It's for the government to create it. That comes to what FDR and Obama did. Money is too cheap. The banks are not banks, they're traders. They're not banking. So if the banks are not banking, no one takes a risk. So if you are the MD of a particular bank and I get an allocation to import fuel, you just give it to me and we share the profit. That's not banking. So you can't have shareables. You have traders. So you need to change the policy. So I would work on the financial services sector, tear it apart. CBN will be unbundled because CBN should focus on monetary policy. And on monetary policy, it ought to be phased, graduated quantitative easing. That's what they should be doing. We need, like Chikobi has said, to have a national credit agency so they can take loans.
What about the downsides to QE? Because we all see the downsides. I mean, people like Paul Krugman would solely argue against QE, especially in an economy like this.
In Nigeria?
Yes.
Paul Krugman is not talking about Nigeria. He's talking elsewhere. This is Nigeria. I, as a lawyer for the 1 year, senior advocate of Nigeria, am crushed by high rates. So QE is an absolute must for everybody. Absolute must. No. The interest rates must come down.
They have to.
They have to. And I was going to actually go on what Tundun said about the vacuum that we're seeing in the Economic Advisory Council, but they're having their first meeting now today, and then they're set to see the president on Tuesday, I think it is. What can we expect, or what should we expect to come out of this initial meeting from this council?
Inaugural, swear them in, and the president will give his vision statement. All he's done is to say 100 million, but we want him to say what he's expecting.
No, they're having their inaugural meeting. The EAC are having their inaugural meeting.
Have they been sworn in? I'm not aware they've been sworn in.
No.
So how can they have an inaugural meeting?
That's what was reported. They're due to see the president on Tuesday.
Whatever. After the ceremonies, I would expect that the inaugural meeting will say, look, what do we want to do? Do we have enough information? Or do we need to go back to Mr. President to say, what do you want us to do? Because we can design what you want, but we'll be sure that you don't want a bungalow. You want a 100-story building. So once they are clear in their mandate about what the president is looking for, they'll look at themselves and say, there are gaps. We need a couple of guys to come in. Then once the team is complete, they say, right, in a month, we will present to Mr. President the architectural design for development.
Are they capable to do this with the vacuums we're speaking of, or in your more positive way, They
could do it in two ways. They could, for instance, invite experts in fields they have no expertise. So those experts will come in and say, well, here's the design. Structural engineer, tell us the strength of concrete, blah, 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 blah. So the important point would be that they need to have an institutional design. That's the baseline. With the institutional design, they go back to the president and say, well, here's the design. You've given me a task to build something for you. Do you like it? He approves. Because the contractor must go back to the commissioner and say. So once approved, then build time. This thing called our budget, it's a joke. If you come in to see me as a patient and you need 10 pints of blood, I'm going to give it to you in one go, not in 5 years. Nigeria is anemic. My diagnosis of Nigeria is that it suffers from a certain economic malaise. It's to do with the system of the body. When it slows down, the liver is weak, the kidneys need to be flushed.
Sounds like organ failure.
Multiple organ failure. Multiple organ failure. So we need to clean out Nigeria. Once that is done, then the patient can, you've tilled the ground. You've tilled the ground. The engineers go in and dig out maybe 20 feet of mud to point the concrete so it can carry the foundation.
Talking about interest rates and why they're not coming down this year as far as the central bank is concerned. I'd like your thoughts on that and what is the proper approach to take with regards to interest rates. We really need to boost the real sector. And also you made a point earlier about Lagos state governors in general, and their sort of failure to really properly generate IGR. That point was also raised at the platform, Section 162. Is sort of, yes, it's an enabler. It encourages resting on your laurels. So looking at development law, let's look at the foundation, which is the Constitution. How exactly should that be approached?
What it is that the governance mechanism is part of the economic transformation process. So again, we go to the members of the council, and there's no governance specialist who will say, look, we need to do all of this to look for the spaces in which subsidiarity can apply, so that you take power from the center, 98 items of power at the center, and bring it right back. So Lulu made the point about driver's license, marriage certificate.
Yes, all from Abuja.
Being issued at Abuja. What rubbish is that? So we must rebalance the federation. Leave aside the difficult question of restructuring. Leave it aside for once. Just leave it aside. Political restructuring. Put it aside. We can economically restructure by looking at the items of power that can be shared. I mean, the other day, someone was saying, Nigeria, not enough power. But what's the role of the states, the banks, business people? But if the government is the bakery, big bakery in Ikorodu, and it chooses a number of people to transmit the bread to our distribution points. So my market is in Onitsha, but you dump me, you dump the energy on me in Benin. Problem. So we need to harmonize all this. So development law comes in with governance specialists to locate where are the gaps, leaving the difficult question of political restructuring. That needs to be done. So that is part of the institutional design. When they are redesigning the 100-story building, this will be put in place. On the issue of interest rates, it's government money. When FDR came to office and sat in the Oval Office and bellowed, wow, I'm helpless. He said, that's the last I will say about being helpless. First thing he did, he declared bank holiday Monday. The name comes from Roosevelt closing the banks, calling in his guys. He called in Senator Glass and Senator Stiglitz. He said, what do we do? And they came out with a new Bank Reform Act. It regulated banking, made them to focus on banking. Obama did the same with the Frank Dodd Act. So I need to see the same with a Tundun Rufai Act.
But a lot of people still fight the Frank Dodd
Yes,
Act
exactly.
and say it's the Frank Dodd Act that stifled banking in America.
Yeah.
But Trump is trying so hard to repeal the Frank Dodd Act today because they say it's counterproductive.
Because it's got to have competing interests. If you want Nigerians to hail you, put in the Frank Dodd Act. If you want the bankers to hail the president, leave it as it is. The choice is yours. If you are people-oriented, you will do things that will drive business to the small man. That's the purpose.
But isn't it dominated by market forces? What are the market forces on
There are
ground?
two key things.
Yes.
No, I'm not a market fundamentalist. That's out, and we don't need it in this part of the world. We need two things: social regulation and liberal markets. These are the two things you combine.
How can social regulation and liberal market work together?
Contradiction in terms?
No, it's not.
How can social regulation and...
Obama did it.
Okay,
But Obama has been called a socialist economy.
No.
And America went
Those are the
backward.
names-
And America wasn't growing.
Those are the names
that was
that will be hauled at you by the conservative market fundamentalists.
Yeah.
There's a big war going on. So what China did was to say, you know what? We don't want any of this. They chose another model called state capitalism, which is the model I'm thinking of in my head. Again, it's something for the Economic Council to consider. Do we say, you know what? Let's have the state own everything, but we allow them to operate as private people. That's what China does. All these guys you see here are state-owned, but they are paid as if they are private sector. So these are the models. It's not for me to say here what model will work. It's for the Economic Advisory Council to look at all the issues, to look at what Stiglitz has said, to look at all the issues and say, what do we... For me, here's what I think.
But it goes back to the conversation. You see, you can't have this conversation, sir, without talking about true federalism. Because Soludo was saying in that speech that in America, for instance, you have a tax regime in Las Vegas. It's different in Connecticut. It's different in other parts. Then you still need to go back to the conversation of federalism, because there's only like true federalism.
Yes,
There's only like true federalism.
Or it's unitary.
And true devolution of power.
Yes.
And in clear cases, why should the VAT be shared by the federal government to states?
Yes.
Those are questions we should ask.
But that's what I just said, that is part of what will take place in the institutional design. But it has to be signed off by the owner of the design, that's the president. And if political restructuring, which I support, will pose a problem, we have the space to do a lot more than we're doing now. I'd rather not be where I am, where South Korea has 31 bridges, a capital of only 10 million, and 60 tunnels. You have only 3, and no tunnel.
Yeah.
So I'd rather say, if we can do this with this stifled political situation, let's roll.
And like you said, in order to do that, we need more Dangotes, like it was put. And we need to be able to encourage people. And one example you gave is by, of course, reaching our single digit, which you said we just need to put a shock into the system. And it is very easy to achieve. Yeah. But what else do we need to do if we get the shock right? But what else do we need to do to get rid of this infrastructural deficit? Because you take somewhere like Singapore, for example, they got their independence 5 years after us. They got their independence poor. We got our independence as an oil-rich nation, yet we can look at their model, and honestly, I do not understand how we have not been able to get there.
What I'll do is what the English call the PSBR, Public Sector Borrowing Requirements. I'll determine what that is. The infrastructure spend is said to be $30 billion. I'll look for the money. I know that in a couple of big oil blocks, we're looking at about 50 to 60 billion.
Yeah.
I will hypothecate it. I get the money on the spot. I don't treat malaria in 9 years. I treat malaria in 1 day. So I'm going to sort out Nigeria's infrastructure problem in 1 day. I want these people to design it. We look for the money. So when you do your PSBR, you know what you need. We don't have a PSBR. Look at the Federal Secretariat lying there empty.
I just talked about that.
It should be sold.
So funny.
It should be sold.
No, but PSBR has its own downsides.
There's no downside.
It worked in the UK, but it led to the destruction of companies like Corellium. That was the biggest architectural company in the UK.
There will be disruption.
Yeah.
But it led to the breaking of Corellium.
No, there will be disruption.
There's always going to be a casualty.
There will be disruption. But the thing is to say, what do we need to design a new Nigeria? We need bridges in Lagos.
Now, I want to talk to you,
Don't
sir.
we?
Yeah, it's embarrassing. You just said we only have 3.
I want to talk to you, sir, about Nigeria's galloping debt profile and the
Yes.
fact that we've now approached the World Bank again. Peter Obi raised...
Answer to that is simple.
Okay.
Hey, girl, you dropped a penny. Just a penny? Not a penny. It's what you do with money.
What is going to have an impact? How are we going to encourage that level of trade across Africa? What are the starting points?
Starting points that each country should tell itself the truth. You know, I remember going to the football stadium, I think in late 70s or early 70s, when Mengistu Haile Mariam was in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian players looked so thin that we were giving them bread to eat. Look at today, less than 35 years. Ethiopia is sending 5 aircraft every day to Nigeria. Kanu, Kaduna, Lagos, Abuja, and Enugu. Every day. And we don't have any going.
You have fast train.
Something's wrong.
Absolutely.
Something is wrong.
I know you don't want to talk about politics today, so I'm avoiding that. So I'm going to still stay on economic transformation and not political. But how is one possible without the other?
It's so intertwined, but clearly I can see as a pragmatic realist that northern Nigeria understands restructuring different from southern Nigeria. So what I'm going to do is to say, all right, let's start an incremental developmental process. And maybe when the success is seen at the subsidiary level, then it will become popular. But just to stay and do nothing, as we are now, isn't good enough.
Yeah,
We start somewhere.
So
Thank you,
start
sir.
somewhere.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.